Hi everyone, it's Marilise here, and welcome to Your Bully-Proof Life, my channel where we talk about all things anti-bullying, so how to bully-proof your life, and specifically around the inner bully, so taming the inner bully and the outer bully. This is all about, facing your biggest fears and turning them into your fuel for success. Now, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and some of you may have seen my interview last week with Rob May, where we kicked things off. But this is really for me about raising awareness of the importance of managing our mental health, especially in these very, very uncertain times. Someone sort of mentioned unprecedented times the other day. So, I think it's really, really important that we talk about this topic. And so this month I've dedicated to mental health awareness, and specifically around how we conquer our inner bully, how we tame the limiting beliefs, those fears and those self-doubts that crop up, on a daily basis. So I'm so delighted to have Thomas Duncan Bell with me today. Thomas has a very, very impressive track record. He's known as the Bipolar Businessman. He's managed to share his story with over 2 million people since he started being open about living on the bipolar spectrum. So Thomas, as I said, the bipolar businessman, and he's literally done it all. You can see all those medals behind him, and you look very, very handsome today as well, Thomas.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I do try. I thought I'd make the effort even during lockdown.
Thank you, and I wouldn't expect anything less from you. Thomas has won awards for leadership in mental health. He's a primary mental health keynote speaker, very impressive guy, commentator for the Institute of Directors, trustee for the Grey Matter Foundation. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, that's right, the Grey Matter Foundation. So we've actually written the first official British standards for mental health in higher education, and we're also focusing on writing the first British standards for mental health in business. So that's an organisation I'm involved with, yeah.
That's fantastic. So Thomas, you very kindly offered to share your story with us today, and you've previously captured this in an 8-minute video. So we agreed earlier in the week that it would make sense to share that video.
Sure.
I'm just going to go straight into playing the video now. It's about 8 minutes long. It contains some colourful language for our sensitive viewers.
Hey, just to make it interesting.
But yeah, so I'm gonna hop over to the video now, and then we'll come back after the 8 minutes.
I think one of my issues is that, and certainly one of the issues with my condition, is that you fear abandonment, and that's part of the issue when you don't necessarily have that core parent. Certainly in my case, a father, to kind of guide how you sort of function in society stably. So I was about 20, being in a relationship for a year or two at that point. We'd moved in together, and she was out one night in London, I think, with another guy, and had turned her phone off, and I was going mad. And I didn't have any alcohol, I didn't have any drugs, I didn't have any means of kind of numbing that anxiety and that pain and that adrenaline that I was feeling at the time. And I took a knife and I cut my chest open. And I was bleeding, and I just wanted to feel some kind of release. So I went to the police station in Guildford, and at this point it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd say. And I said, I really need to speak to someone. I'm going to kill myself. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if in my head I would have been able to kill myself. I think I have a want to live, and I have a want and a thirst to do something with my life and proactively actually change the world in some way, or do something that's memorable and warranted, with my energy and with the skills I do have. And they just said to me, the police said to me, there's no one here. Don't you have any friends you can go to? Can't you call a friend and go over there? And I thought, well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And when you've got issues mentally, you don't necessarily want to call up your friends or the people that you work with and say, by the way, guys, haven't mentioned anything about this before, but I suffer from some kind of manic depressions or something, and I've just cut my chest open and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm in the centre of town and I don't know what to do with myself, and I might kill myself. And that's when I went to the doctors and I said, you know, I've thought about killing myself, and to be honest, I don't know what to do about it. And they said to me, try some antidepressants. So I said, all right, and tried the antidepressants. But when you're a sales guy and you can barely string a sentence together by 3 o'clock, it's not conducive to making money, and so you're not going to stay in a job very long. So within a month of starting, so this was around about the age of 20, let's say 2021, within a month of starting the antidepressants, I chucked them in a bin and said, sod this, it's a mental issue, I've got to deal with it. And I went to a doctor at the Royal Surrey County Hospital, and they sat with me for sort of 4 or 5 hours. And in the end, he said, you know, Thomas, we strongly feel that you're on the bipolar spectrum. And I just felt kind of useless, really, you know. And the doctor put me on a waiting list. That waiting list lasted 3 years. During the course of which I went to see another doctor at a hospital who re-diagnosed me with the same issues as the first doctor. So I did kind of have a good indicator as to what I was dealing with, but at this point I was thinking I've been through kind of 3 to 4 years of doctors and hospitals not really giving a shit, to be honest. It's a wonder half the people with mental health issues are still alive, based on my experience with how the mental health service was at that time, to be honest. I mean, I've stood on fucking train tracks, you know, waiting for oncoming traffic, not knowing what was wrong with me before any kind of diagnosis or any kind of help from the system that we have in play. There was no mechanism for support. I tried to go and seek counselling, but I think when you see people almost want to vomit by some of the stuff that you've been through, you realise that if they're not as fucked up as you are, they're probably not going to be able to help you. And it became quite apparent after a while that I wasn't going to get my support and my fix from going in that direction. I started thinking, okay, this is an issue that's defined mentally. How can I combat that? You know, if I want to do something about this, I'm going to have to trigger a mental stimulus within me that helps to guide me through that path of destruction that I see on a daily basis. How do I go from being bedridden and lonely and depressed and wanting to kill myself to this, you know, ecstatic kind of high or adrenaline that you get when you have a good day? So I started thinking about how I could change the way that I was feeling during the course of that day. Previously, leaving the house on a bad day was quite dark and difficult. So I'd walk to work a different way. I'd walk through the park. I'd leave slightly earlier to try and do that. I'd create systems in the morning, whether that be cup of coffee, toast, half an hour of TV or whatever, to get myself in kind of a mental state or a mindset that was productive for whatever day I was going to have. And to be honest, most of the time you just got to fake it until you make it. You know, if you put yourself in a state where you feel like, yeah, I'm getting there, I'm feeling positive, and you start to talk positive and you start to have energy and you're meeting with people and you're trying to drive change or try and change someone else's life, then at the end of the day, you kind of end up living within that world mentally as well. And so over time, I think I've found it a lot easier to deal with that. We all suffer from anxiety as far as I'm concerned. You know, the quicker we bridge the gap between the fact that if you're getting bollocked by your missus because you didn't come home on time from work, or you're running around trying to get the kids ready and you're anxious and you're stressed and you're sweating and you're thinking, God, I've got to get to mum and dad's. We all go through those anxieties every day. And the quicker we bridge the gap between the people who suffer quite heavily and everyone else, who all still suffer from mental anguish fundamentally, because that's what anxiety and stress is, the quicker we bridge the gap and we realise it's just all varying degrees of the same thing, I think the better we're going to be as a society in general, and the more productive we're going to be. If we took every managing director and CEO of an organisation in the UK and we said, you know what, 45% of individuals who suffer from onset mental illness, they suffer from that because of their lifestyle, their working environment, and it stems primarily from that working life. So think about if you as a CEO or an MD made a change within your organisation and everybody did the same thing, regardless of if you're a one-man band all the way up to the blue chips. We could effectively rid the UK of 50% of mental health issues, or certainly control 50% of the mental health issues in the UK. So I think now, that's probably what I'm fighting for.
Right, so Thomas, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's gut-wrenching, inspiring, bloody brave, man, especially, you know, given your fear of abandonment, which is one of the conditions you mentioned is associated with bipolar disorder, as you said, sort of right at the beginning of your video. Can you give us a quick sort of 30-second overview of what bipolar disorder is?
Essentially, that most people suffer from an extreme at one level, where one day we might be feeling worthless, and on another day we might be feeling like we could be the president of the United States of America. Probably everyone feels that, actually, because it shouldn't be easy to segue in after that chat. But essentially, what I would sum up with any extremity of mental health like bipolar disorder is that we're more creative, we're more loving, we're more trusting, so we're not going to screw you over if you do business with us. We care a lot more about things, we're more empathetic, we're creative, we've generally got a higher IQ, and that means we process information a lot faster than the average person, because we're looking at it not just from a technical level, but from an emotive level as well. So I would say, I classify those things when I talk to businesses as the benefits of bipolar disorder, in that you get something a bit more dynamic, that's far above the value of the negative aspects that we suffer, and generally that we suffer on our own. So, and I think it's quite a unique, superpower, you might say.
But that's amazing, because I think, and that's exactly about removing that stigma, you know. So, so this channel, you know, is all about discovering your superpowers. So for me, you know, I'm always saying that, you know, your mindset and your thoughts and your feelings and what you say and what you do really are your 4 superpowers, you know. And how do you turn something which people kind of label as a disorder, a mental disorder, actually as something that is so powerful? And I think that's the case with many sort of mental related illnesses, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue, I think it's a blessing and a curse in a way. So the biggest issue is that whenever you go through any kind of process, and I don't want to slate the NHS because they're amazing, but whenever you go through a sort of a doctor-based process to understand what your problem is, you have to go through a range of kind of testing procedures that have been pre-built in some context, right? So I think when I was first diagnosed as being on the bipolar spectrum, I had to do like 4 hours of testing with this doctor, this kind of thing. Ultimately, the point of that is to put you into a box, to give you an indicator, to give you an understanding of what your issue is, for example, right? Mm. And in one sense, that's great, because you might, I mean, I felt a bit lost after I was diagnosed. I didn't really know what it meant. But ultimately, my mindset coming out of it was, well, it's a mental health disorder. Primarily, my issue has been that it's developed since childhood through having a dysfunctional childhood, an erratic childhood, and not fully understanding social parameters. So I've got what might be classified as an emotionally unstable personality disorder, which makes you feel like you're going to wake up with a horse's head in your bed. So that's not ideal as well, right? You've got these things going on in your head. But the way I classified it was that it's a mental disorder, and that I would try and treat it by what I classified at the time, and I don't know what the science scientists might call it, but remapping my mind, essentially. So I was like, if there are triggers that cause an exacerbated aspect of this anxiety, depression, whatever it is, what are those triggers in me, and how can I remedy those? Or not necessarily even get rid of habits. I would talk about not trying to get rid of habits, but trying to form new habits. So whenever you try and fight something, normally it comes back stronger and it creates stress and anxiety. So if you're trying to fight the issue that's within your head, you're never going to win, essentially. It's going to keep bringing you down. So if you put it to one side and you start to focus on just the positive aspects, what makes you feel good? Walking to work through the park, for example, as opposed to along that busy road, that makes you feel good, right? So it's those little triggers, that piece of music that you might play that instantly puts you into a state of focus. You know, these are trigger points. You know, I follow a guy called David Goggins. He broke the world record for the most pull-ups in one sitting, right? So he just didn't stop, he carried on. He did something like over 4,000 push-ups. It took him like 17 hours. And all he did was he played the Rocky theme tune from Rocky 1 over and over and over again for 17 hours. This is the power of like the manifestation in your mind. If you can trigger some thoughts and emotions off the back of something that made you feel good, you can always put that front of mind and shift what's negative without fighting the negative, just replacing it with a veil of something more positive. And that's where our body's really unique in terms of what we can do with it.
And then I think that really resonates with me, because I've had obviously my own struggles in the past with eating disorders, and you know, I certainly had the same. Like, it's almost like you can't run away from that feeling. You've almost got to sit with it and make it almost like fine, accept it that it's there, but it's what triggers the anxiety and the stress is when you kind of try and run away from it. So I totally get what you mean about not trying to replace the habit. I mean, throw it away. It is genuinely about rewiring that sort of, and it's always about, you catch the thought first and then it becomes a feeling, right? So recognizing that any sort of feeling you have is started with a thought in your mind, and often it's an unconscious thought, and it goes back to, as you know, kind of childhood trauma and all that sort of stuff. So
one of the biggest things I actually deal with is alcohol, for example. So with alcohol, most people, they try and take a step back from alcohol. And my job is like changing your life in 90 days, right? So 90 days where you stop drinking, get fit, eat healthy, and learn about mindfulness or being present, right? So I deal with people who are trying to get away from alcohol and take a step back from alcohol all the time. And the biggest thing I say to them is, if all you do is stop drinking, and then you're at home and you're sitting and you're thinking about not drinking, don't drink, not drinking, don't drink, all you're doing is exacerbating energy surrounding the thing that you don't want to do. That thing that you don't want to do, that drinking, that concept, that image, everything is still within your mind. So instead of doing that and like winding yourself into a frenzy where eventually you pick up a bottle of wine, the focus should be actually not thinking, don't do this, I mustn't do this. It's, why am I so bored that I'm going to be doing this and this is all I've got to do? What else could I give my brain to be more productive? Do I want to read a book? Do I want to watch a documentary? Do I want to go and get a PhD all of a sudden because I've decided that in lockdown I'm going to innovate myself? You know, it's actually putting something else in place. So you're right in terms of what you say about the mind, but when you get stuck on a thought, even if you think the thought is good, do not drink. I will not drink. That's good for you. That's good for you. But the more you do it, the more you're trying to restrict your body from having something. And whenever your parents told you not to do something, what did you go and do? You wanted to do it, right? It was a taboo thing, but you had to test it out for yourself. And it's the same thing now. We've all got it ingrained into our psyche. So the trick is, don't exacerbate on that one fact. No, if you're going to stop drinking, but replace it with fitness or doing more cooking and this kind of thing. That's the technique to removing something from your life.
And what's your views on sort of meditation? Because I know that, you know, the meditation piece for me is all about sort of getting really still and really getting present in the now and sitting with that feeling, which is sometimes bloody uncomfortable. Are you sort of, how do you sort of do the whole meditation?
I haven't got into meditation as much as some other people have, right? This, for me, I'm on a journey personally. So as much as I help people to change their lives and I want people to stop killing themselves, that's what I'm aiming at. You know, I don't want, I've been stood on the train tracks, as you saw in the video, and tried to take my life, and I don't want people to go there. So my whole focus really is, how do I stop people from feeling as bad as I did? But actually, I think the best focus really is to give yourself something that's positive to drive forward with, right? I mean, that's what we're all searching for.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what you said. So I just want to sort of remind us, you know, in the video, you started putting yourself in a state where you felt, you know, I'm getting there, I'm feeling positive. And then you start to talk positive, and you start to have energy, you start to meet people, you start to change lives, and you start living in a world mentally as well. And a sort of, you know, so it's kind of that sort of world that you create around you. And I think that's the power of the mind you mentioned earlier, you know. And
I think it was like the thing is, like with the meditation thing, for me, I was like, I'm going through this process, I'm getting through things and issues that I have. Like, I wanted to drop alcohol, I wanted to get fit, I'm a vegan now, right? So I call myself vegan light, because if I want a Snickers, I'm having a Snickers, right? But I'm still carbon neutral. So I think, like, I've gone through this process of changing certain things because I realized that, scientifically speaking, if I don't drink, I'm gonna have more of the positive things going on in my body that I need. And I'm not gonna have additional supplementary depressants on top of a bipolar disorder. If I eat properly, I'll feed my mind, and if I understand the science about eating as much as I'm one of those guys who I don't want to read all this stuff about nutrition. So I really try and help people to get to the bottom of nutrition without having to go and wade through a textbook, right? And so piecing these things together, the meditation for me is like the end game. But where I found that kind of meditative state, and where I say you can kind of put yourself into this mindset, was actually for me more doing Spartan racing. So I classify that as the concept of challenge activity or challenge mindset, right? So actually you're choosing your state of discomfort, because your body's always going to go through some kind of discomfort, right? So if you put it through discomfort and experiences all those things, it's not going to be latching on to the negative things in your everyday life, or you're going to become more mentally resilient. So for me, the concept of a Spartan race, whereas everyone thinks it's big burly blokes pushing you about and kicking you into the dirt as they run off bare-chested for some sort of like ceremonial sword or something, right? That's what I thought Spartan was before I went. When I got there, I said to people, what is this all about? And they were like, you'll know at the finish line. And I kept hearing this all over the place. And I was like, what is that? But what it was it's this concept that you put yourself through some kind of hardship. For me, it's a Spartan race because there are lots of obstacles. For others, it might be a marathon, a park run. You know, one person's like park run is, or one person's mountain is like another person's third set of stairs in their apartment block, right? So it's about choosing a challenge that's relative to where you stand in your life, then upping it a bit so that it's pushing you to a limit. And then not worrying about completing the challenge, know that you've done it. And then when you start, you know you're going to get to the end. And so what you're doing along the way is you're actually just learning about who you are. So where I really found out who I really was, were on 2 occasions in the last 6 months. The first was when I booked my first Spartan race. I was 10 days into an alcohol-free challenge. I decided to quit drinking for 28 days. And I said, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to get fit. I'm going to eat healthy. And I'm going to look at my mental health properly. And I ran up a local mountain. You know, for the first time, I hadn't done anything really in 10 years, right? Smoking, drinking, running businesses, preaching to people to be fit and healthy and change their mindset, but in the background, not looking after myself. And I ran up this mountain, and on my way down, I came onto this really steep kind of piste, really, as I started to really rock it down. I just didn't feel like I'd even gone up it. And I was clean and I was lucid, and I felt happier than I've ever felt in my life, really. you know, and I just felt invincible. I was like, fucking hell, you are invincible, mate. No one can stop you. And I was running down this mountain. And it was a real realization for me, because it was the first time really in my life that I truly recognized that looking after the scientific aspects behind my whole body and whole self, my mind being part of my body and them all being interlinked, that was the first time where I really got it. And what stayed in my head was the fact that if you can do that once, you can possibly do that every day in different ways. And so the second time where I got that, the next echelon of stimulus, was a few months later, where I'd gone through a few more Spartan races. I'd qualified for the World Championships right at this point. So I'd gone from couch potato to within 28 days of not drinking to being, you know, a pretty good Spartan racer in the World Championships, representing Team UK. And I went to Germany to compete in Berlin. And I was in the middle of this wood, and it's a great metaphor, because I was in the middle of the wood, and when you're running with the elite people in Spartan, they kind of drift off at the front, they drift off at the back after a while, and you find where you're going to finish, pretty much, right? And so there was no one in front of me. I couldn't see anyone for ages. No one was catching up with me, and I was in the middle of this wood, and I just felt like sitting down. And I was like, oh God, I really would just love to kind of have a seat and chill out for a minute. And while I was running in my mind, I just went, do you know what? The thing is, you can sit down now, and that's right. No one can see you. No one can see you. You could do whatever you want. You could have a nap, right? Whatever you want. But you can hear in the distance that there's a crowd somewhere. You know there's a finish line, at least wind distance away somewhere. And I was probably about 8K from the finish line after doing kind of 16K already, right? So I was into it, and I was knackered. But at that point, I was like, I came to this realization that you're only going to move yourself across the finish line when you're willing to move your body. If I sit here, the finish line remains there. And this kind of went through this conversation in my mind. And then I just picked up speed and continued, and I overtook some people. And in the end, I managed to do this like 13 mile plus 14 miles, I think it was, in 2.5 hours with 30 plus obstacles, crazy obstacles in the way, which is half an hour faster than the average elite person would do it. So I'd come in, and within 6 months, I was at this point where I'd really realized what I was made of in my mind. I was like, I'm not that guy who sits down at the side. I'm the guy who knows where the finish line is, know that he belongs behind it, and I'm just going to push myself to get there. That's my meditation.
And that's incredible, because I think that highlights that we all have things that work for us, and we've got to really embrace and find those things. And sometimes you've got to search hard, you know, deep and dig deep to find those things. When you sort of talk, you know, listening to you, it's very interesting, because I sort of think, you know, you put your mind to something and you do it like full out, and you just fly, right? And I'm also one of those kind of people that when I put my mind to something, I do it and I get on with it, and I don't quit. What sort of advice would you give to people who, you know, really want to, but are just really, really struggling? And I think particularly now in this environment where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of scaremongering, you know, fear all over the news. You know, I'm just really conscious that people are really struggling at the moment, and they might sort of look at the two of us and they're like, oh, it's easy for you to say, you know, but
yeah.
But how if I'm in a place of real kind of desperation and I don't know how to lift myself out of it, what would you say to people like that?
I would say that probably the biggest reason people are in a state of desperation like that, and certainly, you know, where I've been in the past, is you start to think that everything is really hard. You feel worthless. That's the main thing, the commonality that I see everywhere. You have this point where you just feel worthless. I spoke to this girl the other day, and I'll try not to use the expletives that she used, but she said to me, when I had babies about 6 months ago or so, I went up to 25 stone. and I am now down to 18. And I've got 11 dogs. I've got a very active, she's like a dog breeder. I've got 11 dogs. I've got 4 kids. I'm all over the place all the time. I cook healthy meals. You won't find any of those little smiley face potato things or any pizzas in my fridge. It's all completely healthy. But she said, I feel like a fat fucker. And I feel like a dirty fat bitch. When I look in the mirror, I don't see myself anymore. And I've tried everything I possibly can to do something about it. And I said to her, the thing is, I said, firstly, look at how you're talking about yourself. You're talking about yourself like that. She said, oh yeah, I'm just being honest. And I said, yeah, but to say that I might have an issue with obesity is one thing, but to talk about yourself in a derogatory way is just driving into you that you're not worth anything. And you're saying it in front of your husband, so it's commonplace. And then, you know, as much as he's a nice guy and he's not going to say the same thing, it's just this considered piece. Then you go and say it to a friend and another friend, and that's how you describe yourself. So that's what you are, right? And that you're sort of making yourself into this thing that you hate. And one of the big things that people don't realize, even with stuff like shifting weight and all sorts of stuff, is a lot of stuff is based around the level of anxiety in your body and not allowing yourself to let go of those things. Like she hadn't been able to let go of what was negative about her. So the first thing I would say is, whenever you're in that state of despair and you feel like you're worthless, firstly think about how you consider yourself personally and how you consider yourself to other people. And what I said to her was, I want you to go away tonight and I want you to write down 5 things that you hate about yourself, you absolutely hate. Write them down in a notebook. Then I want you to write 10 things that you absolutely love about yourself. It could be, I'm a great mum. It could be, my bum looks great in that dress. It could be, I'm really good at chess. Whatever it might be, right? So just write down 10 things that are great. Then what I want you to do, I said to her, is forget about that list of 5, because we don't give a shit about that. It's the stuff that, you know, it's the stuff we don't want to hang on to. We're just getting it down on paper so we know it's not worthwhile. So take that and get rid of it. And take the 10 points and close your eyes and think about each point in turn. And just think about the feeling that gives you to be a great mum. Imagine your child in your head. Imagine when they're playing in the sandpit, whatever it is that makes you feel like you're a great mum that brought you to that answer. Think about that for a moment. Then look back at your paper, take the next one and do that again. And then what I want you to do, after you've done that and you've resonated on those 10 attributes, what that's doing is that's releasing endorphins in your body, right? So it's releasing dopamine, it's releasing positive energy. It's actually bringing your body back into sync, bringing you back into a state of calm. So kind of like a meditation, you might say, but just my personal form of how I help people to get through a specific thing. I think writing things down and executing things are really important, because when you cross things off a list, what happens? Dopamine, endorphins, positive energy, right? You feel good. You've achieved something. It was on a list. It's not on that list anymore. Happy days, right? So listing is a great way. And then what I said to her is, right, you've taken 5 things, you've chucked them to one side, you've taken your 10 positive things, you've thought about those for a moment, you've brought those feelings into your body. And now what I want you to do is write down 5 things that you would like from yourself, right? That you would like from your life. It could be, I don't read enough. It could be, I don't have enough education. I really wish I'd studied history. Whatever it might be, write down 5 directives. But that's not good enough, right? So we can't just give ourselves directives and say, I want to do a history degree all of a sudden, because that's resonate on history, because I will do that at some point. But what we need to do is we actually need to work out a logical route in our mind as to how to get to those things, right? So all you need to do on paper is like, I want a history degree. How do I do that? Okay, we do some research online. We find out what qualifications we need already. What did we get at school? Do we have to go back and do any GCSEs, A-levels, whatever it is? How do I get onto a course? Which online courses accept me? That's it. That's your process for that one thing. And you do that with each of those things you want to achieve. And then you follow the steps. You know, for me, it's not about, some people meditate, some people like religion and things like that. It's all the same thing, right? It's just us thinking about something, coming to an answer in our mind and trying to put a point on that. The difficult thing is when your mind is a bit all over the place, or when you're focused on negative energy and you've got problems in your life, it's very difficult to separate what's logic from what's emotion. There's these two sides of the brain fighting each other all the time. And that's why I get people to write this down. And it seems a bit sort of provincial, but I think when you get something on paper and you map out a storyline, it just doesn't feel so unachievable. You know, the second thing I say to people, so that's one thing. So that was with her situation, and I tried to take a negative situation, get her to think about it in a positive way. And now she's on a different focus. I've set her up with a personal trainer and nutritionist to advise and guide her free of charge, so she doesn't have to worry about any financial implications. She can just get objective advice from someone I know is going to look after her, right? And take her through that process. Meanwhile, she's getting tested to make sure it's not a medical thing, so she'll have some results from that, which will help to move that forward. On the other side of the coin, the reason we get ourselves down is because we feel like to be like Thomas, or to be like Marilise, or to be like someone else, whoever I might like online, I have to do loads of stuff to be an expert. I have to do 10,000 hours of something to be like a legend. To be, if I want to be a tennis pro, it's got to be like 10,000 hours in. I haven't got that much time. I've got a baby. I've got to earn money to put food on the table. I've got to do all these things. I've got a dog. I've got 2 kids. They're just going to school. That's annoying. Teaching them at the moment. All this kind of stuff. So you don't really have time. And so you're getting yourself down and you're thinking, well, I'm never going to do that because it's too long. But actually, if you want to learn to juggle, the sum of anything you want to learn, I watched a great video the other day, and the sum of anything you want to learn is effectively in 20 hours. So the rate of learning over time bottoms out, right? So in a period of 20 hours, which is 45 minutes per day for a month, for example, you can go from never having touched a juggling ball to pretty darn good at juggling with 3 or 4 balls. If you practice for 45 minutes a day for a month. Then what happens is you kind of go onto this peak where you've sort of stopped unless you put in loads more time, right? So you could pick up loads of different things really quickly if you just devoted a small regular amount of time to them. And the biggest problem we have is we think that everything takes so long, so we don't want to do it. And actually, when you look at how much daily exercise that any one person should have, it's actually only 20 minutes. You don't need any more than 20 minutes. Now, anybody, right? I'm a busy guy, right? I've got 3 companies. I've got a 2-year-old. We haven't got a nursery nurse or anything like that. I'm not like, well, wealthy or anything. I just like doing lots of stuff. Probably to my detriment, actually. I'd be a better businessman if I just focused on one thing, but it's just more interesting. So I've got my 2-year-old. I've got 3 dogs, this kind of stuff. I'm trying to build an Airbnb and all this type of stuff when lockdown happens. And what I find is if you just separate that 20 minutes, you just devote that time to yourself. Don't let anyone get you down about it. Don't let anyone put you down. Take yourself, if it's meditation for you, or if it's yoga, or if it's just reading a book, whatever it is, take that time out, sit in a room for half an hour and just do that thing on your own. And just allow yourself that time. Yeah. People don't devote time to themselves anymore because they're too busy fighting fires. And you know what? Fighting fires is in our lives is just like smoking marijuana, drinking, taking drugs, whatever it is. Absolutely. Because we're not actually solving the problem. All we're doing is martyring ourselves into these menial tasks that seem to just burden us, but we're just busy fools. We're not changing the state of play for ourselves. So the biggest thing I would say to anyone, the biggest piece of advice is firstly, do that thing that I talked about, which is look at yourself. And like honor yourself as a person and know that there are good things, even if a few might stick out as negatives for you. And then second, and also set yourself on a course to change, right? That's simple and easy. And secondly, if you feel like everything's too much or you haven't got it in you, then just take a specific task, juggling, learning a new life lesson, whatever it is, or mastering fitness if it is, right? And just try and do that for 45 minutes every day, you know, and just breaking something down into manageable chunks makes it so much easier to feel like you're driving something. Even if you miss a day, you only need 20 minutes a day, right? So you missed Wednesday, but Thursday's going to keep you up and you were already kind of ahead anyway because you've done 3 days of 45 minutes already. So you've done more than you're allotted for the week. You know, don't get yourself down about it. You know, sometimes like we'll make mistakes and we don't ever follow through and do everything in one go. So it's just about allowing yourself to take bite-sized chunks of things and then being positive about the results and not negative, right? Don't Don't dwell on what you missed. Let's dwell on what you've achieved. You did 6 out of 7 days. Fuck Wednesday, right? Who cares?
Yeah, absolutely.
You went from going you were sitting on a couch and you went to doing exercise for 6 out of 7 days with one blip. So what? I work on law of percentages, and if you do, if you've got a higher percentage doing positive things than you have negative, you're going to end up on a happy day, right? And
absolutely.
you just have to do that in a small way.
And I think so absolutely. I love everything you've just said about, obviously, the baby steps.
That's just a big bottle of water, by the way. It's
yeah,
European style.
So the sort of the big lesson I learned a few years ago when I got to a stage of burnout was exactly that. Was that sort of prioritizing me on my list of priorities and giving myself that time out every day for me, whether that was learning about something new, whether that was exercise, whether that was just lying down reading a book, and relaxing. I think, so that whole like burnout, stress, running so hot, I think that in itself, I think in today's society is the addiction of today's world, and so we're all kind of addicted to that sort of stress and that. And so it's almost, for me, learning to sort of do nothing at the moment still is still quite hard, but I think we have to give ourselves that time to replenish and to recharge. And that's 100%. Self-care and self-love, absolutely.
It's the feeling of guilt, right? We're so addicted to our social media or our phone or our getting back to emails in the next 5 minutes that we feel guilty.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we shouldn't have to.
So I want to talk to you about this statistic you quote in the video, which really shocked me, about 45% of people who suffer from onset mental illness is as a result of their working environment. So you know that I'm all about shining a spotlight in the workplace on bullying, and like you, I have this passionate belief that a lot of mental health problems stem from pressures at work and toxic situations. So tell me a little bit more about sort of, because I think, like saying, imagine if every CEO, managing director, make a positive change in their organization to get rid of workplace, mental health issues, or we could get rid of mental health workplace issues. Could you just talk a little bit more about that? Because I know that's your passion, that's your mission in life, that's what you're fighting for.
Yeah, so I mean, part of what I do is I train companies in the kind of concept of this challenge mindset, how to get people to change things simply, how to do a 90-day course to stop you doing all these things and that kind of stuff. So I'm helping people to engage with their employees and to get the most out of their employees for the benefit of those staff, really. I'm coming at it from a perspective of, if I was one of those staff, what do I need as a human being, not as a member of staff at whatever big brand it is that I'm working with at the time, right? So it's more like, if I'm sitting on a seat every day and I'm responding to customer phone calls, how do I feel, and this kind of stuff. And actually, the biggest issue I think there is the issue of self-deprecation in businesses. So a lot of companies look at mental well-being, and a lot of companies even pitch that it's not a tick box exercise, right? You'll have seen this all over LinkedIn and things. But it is for most people. It's very rare that you get a CEO or an MD who stands up and says, you know what, fair play. I've had a shitty life and I'm your MD now, but this is my past. And I think the issue is, people think that when you get to a certain level of gravitas or position, that you're going to be downgraded. Unfortunately, from a societal perspective, and from a way, without being too conspiracy theorist about it, in big companies with big investors and those kind of things, people do get sacked for being open about like who they are, like if they're gay or if they have a mental health issue or whatever it might be, because they're seen suddenly as perhaps a weak link. Oh, that chap over there who's gay, he won't fit quite right with that demographic of our client base, or that guy over there who's got a mental health issue. What if he breaks down in a boardroom meeting? Do we want that? No, let's try and go for someone who's normal, who might explode and shoot us all because he's so repressed, right? I don't know. That's my theory of choosing someone else over me, right? But the biggest problem is that those people won't come forward and speak. And if they did, then it would be completely different. I did a project recently, and And I'll mention them because fair play to them, right? I did a project recently with Yo Sushi to get them to do 30 days off alcohol. And they really wanted to do something for all of their staff. So we went and did this 30-day challenge to get them alcohol free. And the CEO stepped up and went, yeah, I'll do it. Like, no, I mean, we didn't even suggest it. He just straight out the gate said, yeah, I'm doing it. And so what kind of, for me, that's the kind of suggestive leader that I'm talking about. You know, someone who just, they don't even need to be asked. They just know it is right, and that is their position to do something well. You know, I make money for companies really well. I'm a commercial guy, right? But I see real value in using my friends and people that I trust, who I know are honourable people, to do projects for people that I've worked with or my connections. Now, I don't go and take lots of 10% out of everybody by recommending people to each other. The general consensus in the business world is that if Thomas calls you and says he wants to introduce you to someone, he's not going to try and skin either of you. He just thinks you've got a personality match and probably there's something there. But if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but there might be something. So it's probably worth a coffee at very least, right? And because I've done that for 15 years and I haven't gone, oh, can I have 10% if you make something? Can I have 15% here? And done all of that, which is fundamentally anxiety and stress, chasing everyone up, right? I've just done it out of honest goodwill to get people who have the similar personalities together to do business that fills their need, right? See a need, fill a need. But that is the kind of mentality that we need from people. It's just an ethical perspective. The biggest issue is when things become about money or status or job role. So if there's money that affects it and all our share options might go down if this guy speaks about something or whatever. That's what restricts us and constricts us as a society. So that's what I want people to do. And I don't want them to do it if they don't want to, because those dinosaurs will die out eventually anyway. I just want the guys who are up for it to go and do it, because those are the future leaders that we're going to aspire to be like. And eventually everybody who's got a separate mindset to that will jog on, won't they? Like, it would just be an organic thing. If we all work together with the same commonality, like I said in the video, we're all on different levels of some anxiety spectrum. It doesn't matter if I've got a bipolar disorder and you've got an eating disorder or something else. We're all suffering from some extremity of anxiety. Yeah. And the quicker we realise that it's okay to talk about it because we're all on one pole or the other or somewhere in between, the quicker we're going to remedy this whole state we're in. It's stiff upper lip attitude, this kind of British, old school British bullshit in the UK, right? We won't talk about it because God forbid, you know, no, let's talk about it. Let's just get it out. If I go into a business deal now, the reason my business deals are good is because I go, what do you want to get out of this? And they're like, oh, want to get that. Most people are confused. I'm like, well, what I want to get out of it is I want to do this, this, and this generates money for this company in these ways. And they go, oh, okay, well, we want this, this, and this from you. And it's like, okay, cards on the table, right? No smoke and mirrors, not, oh, you give me 100,000 and I might do this or I might do that for 6 months. Under that, just like, what do you want? Like, what's your end gain and what is my end gain? And now let's meet in the middle and find something that works for both of us. If you're open and honest, everything's so much easier, so much faster.
Totally, and I love the concept of finding what we have in common. I think we solve a lot of the problems in the world that way. So I'm going to do a quick fire round with you.
No problem.
Sort of a few quick questions. I'm conscious of.
Oh, no pressure.
As well, no pressure. So, what do you do each morning to set yourself up for success?
Monday to Friday, and this might pain some people, but I generally run 8 kilometers. So that's 5 miles each morning. So that would generally take me 40 minutes, and I'm aiming to get down to 35 minutes, let's say. But I do 5 miles every morning, and it's roughly 500 meter elevation, so halfway up a mountain effectively. And that's my start. That's like 6 a.m. Get up, muesli, nutrition shake, boom, 40 minutes done, and you're on it. You're on it for the day.
Fabulous. What do you do daily to recharge your batteries?
Generally, at the moment, I am working on a new course, and a lot of it is based on research into these different areas I've talked about, the fitness, nutrition, stuff like that. So at the moment, I'm getting really engaged with all sorts of different concepts. So for me, actually, that kind of recharge factor is just not putting a time pressure on myself and allowing myself to learn about some stuff, you know, without having to go and do an email or whatever, just giving myself that time to feel my way through the websites and whatever it is that I'm doing, you know, just being creative.
Fabulous. What advice has influenced you most in your life, and why?
What advice has influenced me most in my life and why? Do you know what? Someone wanted to invest in me at one point, and he called me up and he said, I've been chatting to my wife about you, and my concern is that you could be on the Forbes list or you could be in the gutter. There's no grey area, right? He was like, you're either going to be a fucking raging success or you're going to be all over the place. So it wasn't a piece of advice, but I would say that I'm well on the way to proving that guy wrong.
Wonderful. No, I love that. So one book that you would recommend and why?
Oh, one book I'd recommend and why. Mark Manson, Everything is Fucked, a book about hope.
Okay, awesome.
It's a beautiful tale of how everything in our society is fucked, thus based on the title, and why that's important and why it's a good thing.
Awesome. And what's the legacy that you want to leave?
The legacy I want to leave is actually I'm building up a business to become liquid enough that I can set up a foundation, whether that's the Bipolar Businessman Foundation, whatever, don't know. But my aim is effectively, what I've realized along the way is that no one ever really helped me, right? So no one wanted to cultivate the good in me. I had to just do it for myself. And so that's always been a sticking point for me. People with money never gave me money because I wasn't born on the right side of the tracks and all this kind of thing. And no one ever really cultivated it. They just got me to making loads of money and then shit on me. So what is the end game? The end game is actually to have enough money and enough people supporting me that I can set up a foundation where we take people with bipolar disorder, ADHD, Asperger's, whatever it might be, some extremity of mental health disorder. And we create an environment where they can be creative and set up their own businesses, but I get people to take away all the shit they don't want to do. Finance, accounts, admin, IT, internet, whatever it is. We'll take it off your hands. We've got top-end consultants who do all that stuff. So you can create a business with money and investment and everything, and you can just do the stuff you want to do. Like put people who are crazy in a room, like a sort of Dragon's Den apprentice amalgamation, where I can take them through this journey of cultivating these businesses so that they all become legacy businesses effectively. And then when I'm dead, some other crazy bastard can run it, but we keep on doing it and we keep on putting the money into disruptive entrepreneurs who think differently to other people. And we don't stifle their creativity.
Awesome.
We embrace it.
Absolutely amazing. So Thomas, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank
No
you
problem.
so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
I'm sure everybody has really enjoyed that. And, you know, as always, you know, I just love speaking to you. We're just so on the same page. It's actually frightening, and I haven't even known you for that long. So
I know it was strange when we first met, actually, just to kind of like bond immediately, like, oh my God, there's something there, isn't there? It's kind of good. I appreciate
an unspoken thing. There's just an unspoken thing, and I think you know, just really grateful for you for joining me today. And where can people reach you if they want to reach out to you?
I've got a couple of websites. So my blog, where I rant about all sorts of things and have a go at big companies for the little people that can't, and all sorts of stuff, you name it, is just thebipolarbusinessman.com. And my company that I run, where I do 90-day courses to change your life and all this kind of stuff, is called My Whole Self, and that's just mywholeself.co.uk.
Fabulous, thank you. So yeah, everyone, thanks for joining us today. If you like this chat with Thomas, you know, please do subscribe to my channel. I will be doing loads more in the coming weeks and months. We're going to stay on the theme of mental health awareness this month. And so we'll specifically look at sort of that sort of inner bully, as I said earlier in the beginning. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll include all the links below. So, to Thomas's website and to my website if you wanna find out more about us. Thank you. Bye.
See you later.